Okay, Mad World's me, Coach Sess. Hey, I want to bring you just a few more reviews from Fight For It number 12, and I want to talk about some of the finishes. So in the youth kickboxing department, we had Dakota Gray taking on Alijah Webb. A lot of these fights went very quickly, so I'm just going to talk about what the finish was. Dakota hit Webb with a spinning back kick in the second round, and with the commonality in all these fights was the guy who won, who got the finish, had a lot of things in common. And I refer to these things as the 5 elements of all techniques. You know, they dictated the posture, they maintained better position, their timing was on, balance was on, and they fought inside of their distances. Same thing with Garrett Rosenbaum taking on Kahlil Pettiford. Pettiford maintained the spacing. His composure was outstanding. He reset after every blow. He could predict and see everything coming at him. So in a lot of these fights, the guy that won just had the better overall technical game. Demonte McQueen taking on Brandon Rollins. Brandon Rollins, again, made this guy quit on the stool between rounds 2 and 3. Same thing. The factors were there. You can see Demonte McQueen breaking down early. Hands were coming down, chin in the air. He started blading his stance, posture, position, timing, distance, and balance. If you can maintain those things while your opponent is losing those things, you're more likely going to win the fight. And what we saw is that even though these guys are finishing the fights, they may lose it for a second, but they come back and they return to it. And that's the key, young fighters. It's okay if you throw a jab and the hand drags a little bit. The key is to recognize it and bring it back up. Moving on to MMA, some of the quick finishes here. Josh Hoffman taking on Jeff Henry. Jeff Henry had the same problem that his teammate Zachary Thrift had against Tenarius Dooley. He just couldn't get off. Josh Hoffman was on him. He closed the distance. He let his hands go. He got inside the clinch. He got the takedown off of a vicious uppercut, and just started landing heavy strikes after that from the ground back to his feet, back to the ground, and the fight was stopped shortly. So Hoffman looks pretty good. And if I could say, in these last 2 shows with Team Jimbo, they seem to have their ups and downs. Then I can definitely say Davidson County BJJ is starting to come on. We saw that with a lot of these teams, Conquer Martial Arts, Davidson County, and KickFit. A lot of these teams you haven't heard of, but man, they are making statements, and you better be ready if someone throws these names out at you. Patrick Schaffer coming out at Highest Stand MMA, taking on Silas Muscat from Jimbo. Muscat reached out to me after this fight and said, hey, the article you wrote about me gave me motivation. I will admit Muscat got the win here, but he fought differently than I thought he would. He looked for the clinch. He got inside. He pressured. And Schaffer, I have to give him some credit too. His body looks a little leaned out, but he's pretty darn strong at 145 pounds. And both of these guys really fought a very technical fight for MMA guys with only 1 fight apiece going into this fight. He looked good as well. Just got caught. He was mounted and he did a bridge and roll. Schaffer put Muscat onto his back, but he wasn't aware of his arm. So when he did that, he didn't bring his hand back soon enough. And Muscat was able to lock up the arm lock and get the tap. But prior to that, both guys looked pretty good with their technical skills. This would have been a tough one to go to the distance, but I think Muscat did the right thing and took chances, and he took a chance on that submission after a little bit of sweat had been built up, and he got the win. But both these guys are very surprising, very technical. I think it's just one of those fights where, hey, we had to fight each other. I think most other people, they beat them. Then it was Emmanuel Simpson, also from High Stand MMA, took on Aaron Castro from KickFit, and Castro came as advertised. This dude's boxing is outstanding. He's probably the best new boxer on the scene. We've seen other guys like Nathan Arriaga in the past who had killer boxing for MMA, and a lot of guys don't have that. I think Aaron Castro has the boxing game down on the local level. Simpson and Castro went back and forth, pushing up against the cage, but you have to watch Castro. That's his game. He lets you push him up against the cage. He's strongly built in the upper body, and so you spend all this time pushing and pulling and wasting a lot of energy. He's trained for this. It's obvious that he's trained his body to do this, because when you release, he lets his hands go. And in this particular case, he let his hands go and he got the KO over Simpson. If I could say anything about Simpson, is he reminds me of Taco Bullock, his teammate. There was a point when Taco depended solely on clinching and wrestling. The new Taco that I've seen, his last couple fights, is a Taco who's willing to let his hands go, and he's getting different results. I think Simpson needs to let his hands go. There were moments when he was in the middle of the cage, he was willing to strike, but it was more measured, and he put more activity into the work he did against the cage. Flip that, be a little bit more measured against the cage, but hey, let your hands go a little bit on the outside. But again, congrats to Aaron Castro. Look outstanding. Trevor Loken, the last finish I want to talk about. Trevor Loken taking on Titus Moore. This fight, again, surprised me. I thought that both guys would test one another in the open with their striking. Both guys are finishers in the striking department, but Loken decided to push him up against the cage. And Moore, his biggest mistake was that when he released, he didn't find a new angle to restart the fight. He too wanted to press up against the cage. He too wanted to look for the takedown. I thought that one of these guys should at least stay in the middle and test the other guy, test their resolve to see where it goes. But that didn't happen. And there was an engagement where Titus was backing away and Loken stepped in and caught him. And as simple as that. I think the lesson learned is if you're going to pull away from your opponent, you need to angle out. Especially if you don't have anything tactical and you're just kind of winging it, angle out, reset, come back in with a new mindset, new attack. Those were just some quick reviews of some of the finishes that I saw. And again, I don't have to go into detail because what was right is what all the winners did. Trevor Loken, Aaron Castro, Silas Muscat, Josh Hoffman, Pettiford, and Dakota Gray, and Brandon Rollins. They all did one thing that was very common, and that was they maintained the 5 elements of technique. These are the basic elements of all techniques. Techniques have more than 5 qualities, but they don't have the same qualities. But these 5 building blocks are in every technique. The posture, the position, timing, distance, and balance of all these young men was outstanding. They maintained it, and they maintained it a lot longer than their opponents, and they got the finish. So just keep that in mind. You want to become a finisher, work on your 5 elements. I am Coach Sess, and you've had words with the Mad Coach.